throughout the entirety of our relationship to convince me that no, they're good, really. Oh god.
That's always the thing, isn't it? That's what usually like throws the band in the trash at that point, is the guilty by association thing, huh? That's why I was like, yeah, I do have that.
Yeah.
And
also, the stream
it doesn't even matter if it's good.
It's up. I see the all of us. It's fantastic.
Okay, and it doesn't care what my
You have 8 viewers.
My title is. So I'm gonna change the channel title to Sleep Easy and Sapphire. Rip me apart.
Just name it Dick Butt.
That was Clark's other
stage
name for NSP's stream title.
What, Dick Butt?
We are live, guys.
Hello. Hola.
This is the content that people came to hear.
This is it. I don't know what else is happening other than, oh, hello, everybody. Hey, Tiger Chick. And no worries. You're a champ.
Yeah, we love you. You're like such a star.
You're so sweet. I can't stand it.
Okay, so I think this is okay. So
I just posted,
and then Sapphire Weapon, if you'd like to do the same for your folks.
Yeah, all 32 of my followers.
All 79.
I'll just retweet Sleep Easy's tweet. That's easier.
I'm really stoked that somebody named Rodzo3 just invited me to chat on Reddit.
I like that. I've gotten the weirdest random DMs on Reddit.
I get a couple of those every now and again. I don't check Reddit as often to like see those, but every now and again I get them. I also get them on Twitter. By the way, if there's anybody listening that has done that, I'm sorry if I haven't gotten back to you.
Your handle on Twitter is literally Sleep Easy DMs,
yes,
and you don't
DM
respond to DMs.
I'm collecting them. There's no shame in this. It's an urge. It's not even a hobby.
Oh, okay.
To just collect as many DMs as possible. I'm writing a book.
Oh, I see.
It's a private frog book. It's intel on the human race to take back to my frog brethren.
Man, that stream really destroyed your brain.
I don't know why either. I just got off and I was just like sitting there and I was like trying to be as like cordial as possible because I literally could have just put a pillow in front of my face and just like knocked out standing up. If you just nailed the pillow to my forehead, I would have instantly hit Z's right there.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say that you wanted to like suffocate yourself. Like,
oh no, that's not my thing. Sleeping, if you haven't guessed already. Oh, it's okay, Bowley.
You guys should recap it for everybody.
Recap
it. Okay, so I'm gonna wait like 2 or 3 minutes before more people possibly get in here because we had such a rocky start. But I feel like based on the backhanded but constant string of DMs that we were being sent by you, Sapphire.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You ought to recap our.
I didn't do anything.
I don't. Where? I don't see them, and I collect them.
The problem with that is that I didn't take notes as I was shitposting at you guys, and so I don't necessarily remember what I was mad about for all of this, but
I think a lot of it, and okay, so I will say too, for those of you
Hypotechnical.
that are just joining this stream, we just talked with Night Sky Prince, and he was gracious enough to have two lovers of the game after he had a couple of videos with, we'll just say, alternative viewpoints on the game. Um, and he, I think, caught some slack for that, but a couple of things. It wasn't necessarily intentional. He had some people cancel on him. But two, he is really genuinely interested in getting um, as many alternative viewpoints as possible. And I do think we actually probably gave him some information that gave him a little bit more hope. But that really wasn't the purpose of the conversation. It was just to get more um, viewpoints out there, and he was really gracious to host that. I am joined right now by Sleep Easy, who was on that chat with me, and Sapphire Weapon, who also goes by Auto Ignition and Agony Crossbow. Um, uh, a little introduction on Sapphire Weapon. She is one of the, I think, most knowledgeable FF7 lore repositories on just about everything. We make jokes that she specializes on Brufus Shinra, but really, it's hard for me to think of anybody that knows as much as her about things like Before Crisis. She's a OG resource, and I think she has a really grounded viewpoint. I'm really hoping, and we sold very hard, both on and off stream, the prospect of getting Sapphire Weapon as one of the guest hosts for upcoming Night Sky Prince streams. That'd be a really good idea.
Yes. Seconded. And I'll frog it up in the corner. I'll get my pom poms. I'll join that chat.
it was weird to be in the chat for that stream because I went in there 100% expecting to be cheerleading you guys, and then more often than not, I found myself agreeing with Night Sky Prince,
Look at that.
which was very strange to me.
Which
It was very
I kind
strange
of
for me.
expected, honestly. Like, I think that, like, he's there's a middle ground there for you guys, like, in like his argument with stuff. And I think that is where I think would be like a really productive conversation, like, would come from.
Because ultimately, I think you still liked the game, right, Sapphire?
You know, it's been how many months, and I still don't know if I like the game.
Yeah.
That's weird about it. I can't tell if I liked it.
I think it's because of that, though, that it's like a perfect stance. It's like arguing for both sides without feeling like you're beholden to like either one yet. I think that's literally the best way. Sorry, I'm gonna really quickly say hi Botanical and thank you, and hi Bowley and hi Tiger Chick. I just want to make sure that I get all you guys because thank you for joining us. But yeah, I definitely think that like your guys' conversation would be one that I would absolutely sit in on.
Yeah. And I also want to shout out to Night Sky Prince, who is in the chat.
Night Sky.
Oh, hey.
Thank you for such a good time.
So here's my thing with Remake is that I went through the game, and for the vast majority of it, I was having a blast. I played through it with my roommate watching because she is just like on the edges of like nerd fandom culture, where she's like, I know that this is culturally important, this game, so I want to see it. And we're having so much fun. And then we got to the drum, and I said to her out loud, this game feels like they weren't sure if they were going to make another one, because so much of what happens later in the game is being used right here. And then when we finally beat the game, I beat Sephiroth, I beat the end boss. Neither of us said anything. The credits rolled. We didn't really talk. And then it saved. And I turned the game off and I said, Okay, we're never going to talk about this again.
Look at where you are now.
There I
am. I understand that perspective. If anything, that's exactly how. I don't know if I would have liked the game as much, like thinking back on it. Like it took me this long to arrive at the conclusion that like I don't think that all the lore is necessary. So I'm not sure. Maybe I am more biased just for the fact that I just immediately jumped into like wanting to cram as much compilation knowledge into my brain as possible after this, which was not something that I had prior.
For me, another thing that biases me. Remember, I am a hard mode, like I'm a platinum junkie, and so I probably would have rated this, like an 8.5 the first playthrough. The second playthrough, and I really believe the game was designed in a way that made the second playthrough really good, because hard mode is incredibly well designed, because it would be absolutely impossible to have started the game in hard mode given the learning curve of the system, and that it'd be really hard to tool the bosses down to be beatable before level, we'll say 40. Really, 40 is, given the stat layout, it was really well optimized for hard mode, and given how strange and how unexpected all the extra lore stuff, like the whispers, it really, you didn't know you were, unless you had the well poison, you didn't know you were possibly missing a bunch of stuff until the end. And so the incentivization of making hard mode ultra fun and giving you a chance to go through the game again, I really dug that. Especially how much I loved hard mode. I mean, like, I know you guys have seen me, like, I 2-minute top secret times and stuff like that. I really like the extreme combat stuff, and so I have a little bit of bias because of that. I won't lie.
I mean, that's fair. Total disclaimer, I am probably one of the very few people in this fandom who did not like the combat at all. I think primarily the reason why I didn't like it is because of the way that the boss fights were designed, and that soured me on the whole experience. Just the fact that they were so long, and those cutscenes interrupted you, and there was no animation canceling, so you got stuck, in attacks, and you couldn't do shit. But then again, I have to also, another disclaimer, I came right off of Devil May Cry 5 Bloody Palace into Final Fantasy VII Remake.
So did I. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's weird. I had no idea. Yeah, which actually made, I think it made me wait till hard mode to start liking the combat.
Yeah, I wonder if I went through hard mode if my opinion would completely change on it, just because of the way that I guess normal was designed. It was just like, this needs to be faster, or something needs to change. I'm not sure.
I had the exact same feeling while playing Remake. Is that so my only background in this kind of area, like other than just like brief interactions with like compilation stuff, and but nothing like this other than like Kingdom Hearts. And the one thing I noticed immediately is how like untelegraphed everything felt in Remake specifically. Is that like in Kingdom Hearts there's like vocal cues, visual cues for attacks, so that you know like what's coming before it happens. Whereas in this game, you can barely like see the text of like a move that's popping out. And I think I was really frustrated going into that right away. But over time it became less of an issue for me, but I still felt like the game, and then don't get me started on like aerial combat or anything like that, where like Kingdom Hearts like makes that just so much fun. I only started enjoying myself towards a certain point in the game. And then I was like, okay, this is like the way that the game wants me to play it, which is my fault, right? Is going in expecting it to be like identical in that way. But I feel like those are things that they did so well in that other game that it's one of the weird things that I noticed in Final Fantasy 16 gameplay, that I was like, this looks more like what I was expecting from Final Fantasy 7 Remake, which is an odd thing to say, but
it's more of what I wanted. It's not what I expected. But then again, I went into Remake expecting classic mode to be good. So who's the real clown?
Oh God,
I'm the clown.
I don't know about. Yeah, I was like, that seems like a soft feature. A soft feature.
It could have been cool. It could have been really cool, but they would have to up the rate in which you get ATB so that you can actually do a real hybrid system. And the fact that it's only on easy means that things just die while you're auto-attacking, waiting for ATB to come up. And it's like, this is so stupid.
Jesus, yeah. that system was aggravating for a while for me too.
Night Sky Prince, we love you too.
We love you.
Yes. Thank you for having us. It was such a good time. I'm sorry that my brain literally started falling out of my ears towards like the end half of that.
And we still haven't found it yet. It's still gone.
It's gone. It's gone. I think it just slithered out the crack in the door, but it was super fun. And it was just, yeah, I think that went really well. Super glad. And I'm looking forward to future conversations when this Ultimania comes out.
Okay, I do before you just start railing on us, Sapphire, I do want to Rod03, who sent me some DMs in Reddit, and then I invited to the chat, did have a question, and I wanted to address it. And just so you know, I think you guys are both incredibly familiar with the alternate Midgar theories, right? That yes. Taking a look at the discrepancies between
the models,
and what it could potentially mean for like alternate timelines.
Yes, I've looked into that a fair bit. There's a couple of really solid videos that kind of go into like depicting like the differences. And yes, it would. What would be fun is actually, sorry to like interrupt. But what would be really fun to do is like a second Ultimania like information like reveal. Like it would be super fun to do some like deconstruction on the fly and see like how that goes. I don't know how that would work necessarily, but just like talking about it as it's fresh and just like seeing what could possibly be like.
I think that would be hard just based on getting everybody at the same place at the same time while we're all looking at the translations at the same time.
We need 5 people in the background typing away. But yeah, it would be definitely fun to have that conversation while it's fresh.
Hey, I do want to just acknowledge what NSP said, and I did have one question for NSP, and that's that, and it's a question, it's a legit question if you're still listening. Did you know that within the contents of Final Fantasy VII Remake, there is in fact a butterfly?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That represents the United States flag. And would you like to see it? Because I don't think anybody else in all of fandom is reporting this incredibly crucial information. Okay, I'm going to show this to you. So I hope you have a pan for all of your brains to explode into.
This
was the only place that this could go.
I was about to say this is the head of this joke. Like you just reached the peak
this
of it.
This isn't funny.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
This is serious, guys.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, you guys don't get to see my face for a second because I've got to. I've got to.
I am crying very seriously right now. Very serious cry.
Well, Midgar was based off of New York City anyway, originally.
That's true.
Right.
And Chocobo Joe is going to be chasing you around.
Oh, hot.
What? Right. So wait. By the way, if that's we were getting into the
but truly
we were getting into this Midgard talk. What is the end thought of that? While you're getting to your famous
okay, if I had to guess,
discovery.
I would say there's a 20% chance that it was not just
I know what you said. You have to let us go after Eric.
Developers mishandling assets through like a a pretty serious strange development process. I think that is the more likely explanation for the model discrepancies. I would be pretty stoked to find out that that they did it intentionally, but it's just weird that they didn't mention it in any of the Ultimanias and stuff like that.
I think it's almost like if it is the case that this ends up being like some actual like discovery, I think that it's a perfect setup to introduce that concept. Do I think that's what's going to happen? I'm not. I'm on the fence, honestly. I'm not saying no, and I'm not saying yes either. I think that I could see that happening. I can see that being a way of like hinting at a bigger story picture.
But here's the thing. I've gotten into huge fights with people on Reddit about this. If you actually look at the quote-unquote alternate Midgar, it's very clearly missing textures and details and assets.
Oh, so it's not even like a fully fleshed out model.
No, it's not.
Oh, God.
It is just this barren, gray, smooth thing. Like, the floodlights don't have actual lights in them. There's no windows in Shinra HQ. There's no color on it. It doesn't really interact with the lighting all that well, at least not compared to everything else in the scene. It looks like a mistake.
It is definitely, I will just say this, it's definitely odd. And it is a sore thumb when looking at like into insane like detail about this game. Like I can't.
And Toriyama has even come out and said in interviews that he has noticed mistakes in the backgrounds of some shots.
Yeah, which I thought had to have been a reference to this, but there are actually a lot of mistakes. There's
textures.
Yeah, the texture thing is pretty rough. By the way, I just want you to know that the reason that we have that we just accidentally shipped Tifa is because of Sleep Easy. I gave him the choice in the sewers with this playthrough, and he chose Tifa because he ships Tifa officially.
I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. There's no video evidence of this, is there?
Oh, absolutely.
There's none. Don't go check for it.
It's on the cloud. Everything's good. Okay, so
nobody is Best Grill other than Genesis.
Okay, so
take that to heart.
So, Night Sky Prince, are you ready?
I'm not.
Can you handle what's about to happen to your eyeballs? What's this? Holy shit! Holy shit! USA.
Oh my god!
Look at that! Look, it's so beautiful. Oh my god!
I'm speechless.
It's fucking breathless.
I don't know if this is more funny because literally you have shown that butterfly off. I think every single time
I am so unabashedly and unapologetically proud of that butterfly. And it was the one thing that when you asked me if you could use any of my stuff,
that was the thing.
Like if you would have used the butterfly and not basically
I
made me the star of that video, it would have ended our friendship.
That's the one that will break the camel's back. Oh God.
So,
no.
Yeah, hey, Shinra does have Trump vibes. Actually, Shinra has USA vibes, and we don't talk about that a lot, but it does. It totally does.
Oh yeah, especially in OG. Way more in OG than I think in Remake.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're getting that talk from, but I don't see any similarities.
You're a proud patriot, and you don't.
I like the USA butterfly. What do you have to say to that?
Well, there's no arguing that.
Yeah,
No, I do
think
too,
we're all on
but-
the same side.
Yeah, fuck the planet. The planet's
And pulling out of this joke in 3, 2. Hey, how's it going, guys? How are we doing?
My God.
So, you know, there are 2 weird books coming out. And the World Preview book that just came out, it came out like a year ago in Japan, or like in March in Japan, and we're finally getting a translation of it. But in addition to that, there are 2 more books coming out. One is a new Ultimania, very weird Ultimania. We're excited about that. And the other is this like called a walk through Midgar. And honestly, it's just my stream, but in printed form. It is like all the graffiti, all the little details, all the butterflies. Like I saw a butterfly like in one of the preview pages, and I went outside and screamed at strangers over it. And they, you know what though, they respected me for it. I think it was the first human contact they had in years, because NSP definitely this is absolutely the first time they've done this kind of thing with a Ultimania guide.
Has there ever been like this type of, because I don't know a lot about the general Final Fantasy games, but is there ever been like a cliffhanger like this?
Yes.
For any of them? For like which one?
Well, I guess it doesn't really count. I thought 13 too, but I was like, they knew it was the middle of a trilogy anyway.
Right. So for this one to start out like in such a, like, we're definitely doing other parts, we're definitely like gonna hint at a bunch of stuff, it almost seems like, and I hate to say it like this, but it definitely seems like they're milking it for as much as it's worth between the games by releasing more.
Well, here's the thing. Kitase came out and he said that we will not have games as a service elements for Final Fantasy VII Remake, which means no DLC, no lost chapters, no expansions, none of that shit. That is not happening. And so he was like, we'll have other ways to keep people interested in the game other than just sheer price drops. And his solution, apparently, is for the developers to never shut the fuck up, and they just make it worse every time they open their mouths. So I don't know what kind of strategy that is, because it's only Japanese. It only ever really comes out in Japan. So I don't know what he's thinking that this is doing for his Western audience, but...
Well, I appreciate that DLC shouldn't be like a expectation, and I mean, I'm all about more stuff to do. Like, I would love a nightmare mode. I'd be okay with that. But I am very surprised that we're still playing version 1.0 of this.
Yeah, they haven't patched it at all.
And there are a couple of game breakers. There's in chapter 16. There's a game breaker. You can get stuck in that ventilator shaft.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Quickly, is that irony for 13 to NSP? Because I genuinely don't know.
Dude, Final Fantasy 13 is dope, and I'll die on that hill.
Okay.
Fuck all of you.
There we go. Confirmed. I agree with that. Like, that's just general like well-being stuff that you would think a game would get.
Night Sky Prince, why you gotta say things in the chat that are wrong? See? I really, really, really loved Final Fantasy 13, like the first Final Fantasy 13. 13-2, I played once and I vowed to never touch again. And then I didn't even actually beat Lightning Returns. I got to the final boss and said, fuck this, and then watched the ending on YouTube.
I've never gotten to that point in any game where I've gotten so close to finishing it and just dropped it.
Well, I didn't like the combat in that game to begin with, and the final boss was just... It was so gimmicky that I couldn't get past it, and I was like, it's not worth the effort of me figuring out how to beat this boss, so I stopped. But the thing with 13 and its universe is that its lore is really fucking cool. It has a lot of really cool lore in it. And Lightning Returns actually has a good portion of that really cool lore. It's just that the games themselves are not great.
Like Dirge?
No.
Worse?
No, it's different. It's completely different.
I actually would say that if you were to take all the story and all the rehashing elements, like just the way that the narrative plays out because of the game system, the combat in Lightning Returns was my favorite of the trilogy. That being said, I mean it was story-wise, it was so awful. It was so bad. And the Paris thing, I will never forgive them for. Like, that is so unforgivable. Or not Paris, but whatever weird French countryside she's in, because she's literally God. Like, what a lazy ascension.
Well, it wasn't just her that went to France, though. All of them got
that totally fixes it. Yeah.
Well, because they released like a whole series of short stories that take place after Lightning Returns ends, and they're actually pretty interesting short stories, because the whole concept, it's kind of like but not like the secret ending in the first Drakengard game where you just show up in Tokyo and then they shoot down your dragon with fighter jets. It's kind of like that.
Will I forgive them for defeating Sephiroth with a blade made out of Lifestream? I won't have to. Because
subscribe to
the blade. Because I don't think the Lifestream is actually going to be damaging to him. He's pretty tolerant for Lifestream, more than almost anything.
He's probably not tolerant to a shotgun in his face. We should just shoot him.
I don't know. He has no trouble, like, with literally any enemy except for getting stabbed in the back by Cloud.
I just like the solution to all problems. Be like, just shoot him.
Just shoot him in the face.
Shoot him.
What a dark ending that would be. Just a bullet goes through Sephiroth's heart, and then there's just a smoking gun, and just cut to black.
Execute him, man. Fuck him.
Okay, and so the power of friendship thing, and like the blade of Lifestream, like, okay, I will admit that the banter in Advent Children with Cloud, where like his answer is, there's nothing I don't care about.
Yeah.
That didn't really deliver well in English. And I think a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of native Japanese speakers that the tone of that was much better in Japanese, and that they really had trouble like making that not just sound like, in the center of darkness is light, like the Kingdom Hearts thing. Like, it just, the power of friendship shit, like, it really came across so corny. There's like nothing about Cloud up to that point that had been corny. But it does like match his, like his progression through the story of that. It's jarring, and I really hope that they don't pull shit like that. You know, or that the progression to him becoming a compassionate, open character is a little bit less melodramatic.
I feel like the reason why that line was so jarring, though, is because Cloud never really does become a truly open character, and that was like the point of most of Advent Children, is that he's still shut down, and he's still closed off, and he's still pushing people away, and that was the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of that explanation in like reunion files where they're talking specifically about like this overwhelming guilt that they had to come up with some idea as to like what puts Cloud back into the mental state of this like sort of quiet character where he wouldn't have been just off of OG, where he seems to have turned a new leaf to a certain degree, where they just said it's like, okay, well, we need to like make that guilt present. And that's, I think, where most of that then turned the character into, like, that's his journey through the entire movie of AC. So they kind of like, they didn't pull back on it, but they just gave him a reason to be that character again, rather than like having, I guess, grown out of that mentality that he had in OG. Which I would imagine would have been the case if he wasn't so racked with guilt.
I think it was like pretty believable the way that they did it, though, because like with the journey, like, so Eris dies and then they have to continue the journey. They have to, because there's that sense of urgency there. And so you're distracted with that. And the whole point that is brought up in On the Way to a Smile is the fact that now that everything's like had time to settle, it is all sinking in where it couldn't before.
Sure.
And this is where I mainly subscribe to, like, and I hate to like toot the horn of a part 5, but this is why I'm so adamant about the idea of like memories, which is unfortunately, like, I didn't get into it too much in the conversation. I tried to, but I was falling over myself most of the time. But the most interesting part about AC and Sephiroth in that story is that he's feeding off of these sort of emotions that Cloud is having, and I think that that's being represented in a larger way in Remake. And I think that capitalizing on like a physicality of these like negative emotions is the right way to do it, not to a certain degree, but handled, I think, just because of the structure of Final Fantasy VII and its lore and all that other stuff. That stage is a way better place to tell that story than, for instance, Kingdom Hearts, where it kind of felt like everything was just spilling out like one game after the next, and it didn't feel very cohesive for me, at least. I'm sure it makes sense now. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, they totally fixed it. It's yeah, they got Yoshi P to come in and fix it.
God.
No, it's still a trash factory, but I did want to just point out Phantom Valentine said something that's Cloud is the only one who isn't affected when he's thrown into the live stream. People normally get absorbed, right? But Cloud doesn't.
The weirdest thing to point out, but like it makes almost too much sense, because the only person that I know of that doesn't dissolve or who does dissolve in the live stream is like Sephiroth. Like, that's just confirmed lore. But maybe it's the same thing, right? As what
you really have to think of this in terms of a physical absorption or a spiritual absorption. Right? So,
well, and that also comes up in Kids Are Alright too, is that what's his face falls into the
Evan
live
does.
stream, and Evan falls into live stream and he's fine. But I think that's what you're saying, Otto, is it might be more spiritual integration with one another,
right?
Rather
than
physical.
I'm glad that you guys brought that up. So I was going to bring up that that also it alludes to the possibility that a lot of the subjects in the short story attached to the world preview, a lot of the subjects of the reunion project, which is somehow different than the Genova project, it's like a subset of Genova Project, had levels of live stream or Mako exposure that did possibly allude to them falling in and surviving, but still being nutso afterwards. So I don't. I will say that the way that Cloud survives that and comes out better for it is unprecedented, and that is an interesting point.
Definitely because of Tifa, right? That he's even able to make it out of that situation.
Well, it depends on whether you take Maiden as canon, and since you've already said that you're taking Maiden as canon, then Eris was the one who protected him while he was in livestream, him and Tifa, and she's the one who guided Tifa to him, and so
I do
magic
don't mind that
shit. Fuck you.
I don't mind it. I don't mind. So Clark brought it up in the stream with Night Sky Prince that they are sending that out with the new batch of Ultimanias.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, that's true. What. Quicksilver told us that.
Yep.
Insane.
And she would know because she, lives
there
in Japan and speaks and reads Japanese.
I think that pretty much gives us all we need to know then.
Yeah.
I don't really have much of an argument if they're planning on giving, because that was the thought I had is when I started doing this, is that the one thing that is not sort of solidified is that there hasn't been any like reprint of this or any mention of this outside of just still existing, right, from when it was released last. But the fact that they're reintroducing it to the population is kind of the same way that like why you reprint like a Ultimania is whether or not it's relevant. And that to me gives off a ton of red flags. So I'm not a maiden who travels the planet shamer. I'm pro maiden for sure.
But on this is that Square Enix commissioned this piece, they published it, and the dude who wrote it was in talks with Nomura and Kitase during the entire time that he was writing it. So at what point does this not become canon with all of these things being true?
Well, and that's sort of what we've kind of come up to like an agreement on, right? Which is that it's not about like including all of it, but it's definitely taking pieces of everything to a degree.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, canonicity very likely matters much more to us than it does them.
Sure. I agree with that. I think that's why, after talking to you guys and putting out part 5, is that it only seemed the only reasonable solution that they can come to, in my mind, to include all that information is just to repurpose it for the story rather than make it again. It wouldn't serve the story any good doing that, I don't think.
Here's the thing. Now I get to finally yell at you guys because I remember what I was mad about, or at least one of the things I was mad about. The thing, what you just said with serving the story, this is one of the primary reasons why I have an issue with the idea of a multiverse, because not a single person who has pushed multiverse theory has been able to explain to me how it's going to be utilized and implemented, what it's going to do for each individual character arc, where it's going to take the story, what's going to happen with it. Not a single person. The best explanation I ever got from anyone was they're going to use it as an excuse to sell us more shit later on down the line. That's the best
seem like
I've gotten.
Enough reason.
Yeah.
For me yet. Like it that doesn't seem to have come up into this. Yeah. NSP, this is exactly why. This is exactly why this person, yes.
Like, if we're looking at Final Fantasy VII as a story, you tell me at what point we're going to be hopping back and forth like Squall and Laguna, and how it's going to serve any portion of the story, or any character arc, or any theme, in any way. How is it going to be implemented? Nobody has an answer.
It's so that they can finally link Final Fantasy 8 to 7.
I'm going to throw up all over your lap.
I completely agree. And that's one of the reasons why I don't even like talking about that stuff, is that it doesn't serve anything. So the possibility of it happening makes it difficult to accept, which is also the only saving grace that any of us have, honestly, is that they just haven't come out and said anything about it yet.
Well,
but I also know that you also
like,
are on the fence about it even happening, right?
I don't think there's a multiverse at all, because here's the other thing, is that if you're reading through like developer interviews and you're keeping a really keen eye on it, what they keep saying over and over again is, have you seen Stamp? Have you seen Stamp? Did you notice Stamp? And then a few questions later they go, by the way, we've been reading a lot of fan theories.
Have you seen
Your
Stamp?
theories are good, but Stamp's inclusion and purpose has already been decided. And I know for a fact that the developers watch Maximilian Dude's streams, and he is the biggest pusher of multiverse, and I feel like those lines are directed at him. Like, we like your theory, but Stamp's usage has already been decided, and we're not going to change it just because your theory is popular.
And I did try and make that point that he poisoned the well. That a lot of this conversation is around his reaction. So to answer your question, is there a satisfying way for alternate timelines narratively to serve the story? I don't know what the story is going to be this time.
Well, that wasn't my question. Not is there a satisfying way. How would they do it? And even from a game design perspective, how would they implement that?
There is absolutely no way that they can serve the story we know with alternate timeline.
No, Otto is
absolutely no way. And I do see that as one of the main detractors of there being an alternate timeline. Like, the reason I'm looking at other stuff isn't because I don't want alternate timelines. I'm excited for the possibility of them being the first to do it right, other than Netflix's Dark. I'm excited for the possibility to give them a chance to do that. I actually, because it's so hard for me to like creatively wrap my head around how they could manifest it in any way, meaningful or otherwise, is one of the reasons I'm looking at alternative theories.
Well, here's the thing about alternate timelines, because I have thought about this a lot, because it's always bothered me. From the second that Max said it, it's bothered me. And because when you look at stories with like a multiverse, at some point you have to, not maybe as the characters, but at least as the audience, arrive at that other universe in some way. It has to be explained and expanded on. So they can't just create this universe with Zack and then never integrate it and never do anything with it. But if Final Fantasy VII is Cloud's story, and they've pretty much said, yes, this is Cloud's story, then what the fuck does Zack have to do with anything, and how are they going to explore that? And there's no way to have those timelines interact in a meaningful way that doesn't detract from Cloud's story and distract from it.
I'm going to jump right off of that and say that this is the exact same way that we phrase the question in NSP stream about the whispers, which is that having them serve a function of the story in a way that isn't necessary, right? So like if we look at it from that perspective, even it's just a hard question to answer. Is like I cannot see picking up a controller and like swinging like in the air as Cloud and then just all of a sudden being like jump to Zack's timeline. It just feels like it would ruin it.
Right.
It would flat out not make any
thing.
sense.
Like, you guys harp on, well, Cloud still has the Buster Sword, and Zack still has to be dead in that timeline. But if Zack's alive in another timeline, isn't it that just the same as him still being alive in this one? Because the whole point is the emotional resonance that happens at the time of his death for Cloud. And so what I was looking at, and I've sent you guys this theory, chat has not seen this theory, my Zack is a man in a black cloak theory. Here's the thing. at the end of the day, whether there's a multiverse or not, or alternate timelines or not, Zack has to go to the reunion. He has to be there. That's
Sure.
it. So what is the point of having two alternate timelines in which Zack goes to the reunion both times? Or just one time or not in the other? Like what does that do? Is there a reunion in the Zack timeline? And if so, then there's two Genovas. And that's a whole fucking thing that you can't just throw into the ether as a story element and not have it completely merge with the main story of Cloud's story and not completely distract from it in some way. That's why I cannot buy a multiverse theory. I can't do it.
And I think that's where you differ from Night Sky Prince, is that
he loves this shit.
He's been well, yeah, singing, but he doesn't know the whole picture. You absolutely do not believe alternate timeline is a part of this game, and
I do not.
And
no.
I fully see where you're coming from. Given the perspective you've given, I think Stamp being different, if it is an alternate timeline, and the purpose is to give us an opportunity to look at another story or another way things could go, then chances are it's meant to feed additional titles. It's meant to feed mobile games or
right. That was what that other person had said to me, and I was like, I hate that that's a possibility in this day and age. Is game industry, fuck that, because then it shouldn't have been in the main game in the first place, because then it just turns the ending of part 1 into an ad, and I hate that.
It kind of muddies the floor for like future titles. Just with inclusion alone would ruin a little bit of that, because then it loses its flavor at that point.
I think it's really possible that that we are going to see some kind of alternate timeline thing, and that I think it's really possible that it will be something that doesn't pay off narratively the way that Western audience want it to. I really do think that that's a possibility.
I want to bring this up really quickly because it's one of the only reasons that I ever so I never brought this up in any of my discussions, alternate timelines, all this stuff, for a good reason. And it's mainly because this discussion is what ends up happening for me, is that I don't see this happening, but this is the most adamantly pushed angle for it. The only good that I see out of the Zack thing is the thematic relevance of him living. I get that angle more than I get.
This is another thing I was mad at you for. I don't think Zack should have a happy ending. So Night Sky Prince is still here. I watched Night Sky. I watched you with Soldier First Class talk to Mike from Resident Arc. By the way, I love Mike. I love his content. I've been watching him for a long time, and I love listening to a fellow writer talk about writing and storytelling and character arcs and shit like that in video games, because there's so few of us. But the whole thing with, well, now Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse are possibly alive, and the platefall didn't kill nearly as many people, and also the Turks feel bad about it now, and their whole redemption arc is being pushed forward along with Rufus's. The whole idea of Zack then also getting his happy ending on top of all of that, it really ruins a huge theme of Final Fantasy VII, which is survivorship, which Mike has also talked about on his podcast, that survivorship is one of the core themes of Final Fantasy VII. Bad shit happens and tragedy happens, but you survive and overcome it.
Unless you die.
Zack being one of the biggest tragedies for two of our main characters to overcome, that's a fucking problem. I have a big issue with that.
He is definitely a big, especially hit home in not only the original game, but in the compilation. They make Zack's death one of the biggest deals,
right?
The Cloud. So he is integral to that story, to his story, to Cloud's story. So I don't disagree with that at all.
Right.
I think that could be an interesting direction to his survival to lead to either a more tragedy. I'm not saying that this is like hinted at. I'm just saying is that these are the avenues in my head, storytelling wise, that make the most sense to me. Is him dying a worse death, or them trying to move into the concept that Cloud never really became his own person in the compilation or in OG, that he kind of just assimilated into like the legacy of Zack, which is kind of what has like, there's like that dialogue in AC where it's like, hey, like Cloud, like remember what I told you? And then Cloud's like, yeah, I'm your living legacy. And that's the strength that he's drawing from. He's just drawing from other people, just the same way that he was like with other things. And I'm not going to get into the lore relevance of that.
The worst tragedy thing, like the idea that he's just being set up for like later death, is unless it's done really quickly, like, and unless it's meant to tell us something more about the story, like for instance the idea that how Cloud got the Buster Sword is killed Zack, you know, and it's to paint how toxically intertwined Jenova is with Cloud. Like that would serve that purpose also. But if he's just like in the game and we follow him and he dies terribly at the end of part 2, that is really hacky. Like I would be, that's just, because then like his developmental relationship with Aerith and Cloud becomes negated. Like, you know, the whole thing's kind of silly.
Well, I think it could do to try to do like a bait and switch sort of thing. You could use him in a very good way for that, because right now a lot of people have finished Final Fantasy VII Remake and felt, we can save Aerith this time. She's gonna live this time. They set all this up. There's no way they're gonna kill her this time and all this other shit. And I feel like bringing Zack back the way that they did could help set that up to be like, oh, by the way, no, you can't save anybody. Like, and they can do the same thing with Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse as well. So the whole thing is like, Zack shows up, he's fine, and everyone's like, oh shit, we changed that. There's so much more we can change. There's no guarantee that Sephiroth's gonna win or do this time around. And then at the end, Zack still dies, and then Aerith still dies, and then that despair sets in, and you can do that well if you tried.
Right. I agree that there is an avenue here where this works.
It's such a narrow avenue.
It is. It's a hard line to walk, but it's possible.
And here's the thing that gets me somewhat hopeful for it is that there's like a balance here, right? With part 1, where it's like there are so many obvious moments where it took a lot of time and effort maybe to arrive at the conclusion of like the final product for certain scenes, where it's like that was just so well handled. Like that was just undeniably very well handled. And then other things that like dropped the ball a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So it's just so difficult in my mind to see them just not stay on that track, because they've already set themselves on the track, right? Where it feels like they're doing a really good job telling the same story. It just doesn't, I don't see any logic in jumping off of that train. I see barely any. So while that's a narrow like outcome for this, it's the only one that makes any sense to me.
His death, like if they wanted to really be good about it, his death could be what spurns Aerith's death, because if we assume that she continues to retain knowledge of the original game's events moving forward, she's going to know exactly when, where, and how she gets got. And so she can avoid that, and then, oh, but now I have the chance to save Zack, then maybe that creates a butterfly effect where she ends up dead anyway, because they're like, Square Enix loves to do the Final Destination shit, where it's just like no matter what you change or what you think you're fighting against, at the end, certain people are fated to be a certain way. And Final Fantasy 13 2 actually went into that really hard, where that whole game was about avoiding Sarah's death, and then at the end, Sarah dies anyway. There's nothing you could have done.
I in my head, the way that I've always seen this is that this is just gonna be the same fucking story, like beat wise from the original.
I disagree with that, actually.
I know that, and I understand why. But the one thing in my brain that, like, I'm thinking to myself, context wise, how shitty I would feel in a good way, like seeing that Aerith death scene, knowing that she knows she's gonna die, and like the weight of all this building up to that. Like, I can see that, and I can see that working to a degree. Is like, with the new context of the same scene, with that in mind, I think you could make that hit harder, depending on how you handle it. But again, like, getting to that place from where we've started here is a hard road to travel, you know?
Yeah.
And I do want to say this. So I think with, like, let's say that the multiverse situation happens, and the idea behind it is that they're setting everything up to merge the timeline, but in the interim, like, they're telling this side story of what would happen if Cloud and Zack were both alive, like, and there are a bunch of different angles they could take with that, but it's kind of irrelevant. If they decide to merge the timelines, what's to stop them from being as fatalistic as you're suggesting by saying, oh, you thought you could change it, but you can't. Even with two Zacks, or even with this new alive Zack, he still dies horribly. Like, they defeat the thing that's keeping the timeline separate, or they restore, the balance, and it's all singular again. But now they could still kill Zack. Like,
the fatalistic attitude in that.
Like, there's no limits to that kind of, like, I guess my point is I'd just be really surprised if they're planning on telling the story of our loss of either Zack or Aerith so dramatically different that its whole purpose is just to make us feel like, no, you have to go through this anyways. Like, the idea that you can defeat fate is an illusion. It doesn't seem different with or without a multiverse, in my opinion.
Well, that still then goes into the initial problem of how do you implement a multiverse from a game design and narrative design perspective, which nobody has an answer to.
So I got it. You fall asleep.
No!
And then you wake up in the multiverse.
I'm not saying that it's gonna be good, but it
doesn't have to be good. I would like any sort of answer, like
Laguna and Squall.
Oh my god! No,
I think that would be the only way to handle that and work. Like, if you were really, like, thinking about it, it's like you're gonna have these moments where, like, Cloud goes into, like, a daze. Like a memory. Like, what if it's just a memory that we've already experienced? You know,
and you get confused about where you're at, and then you see the stamp, think, "Oh, I guess I'm in this." Like, that's why things are happening differently.
How's it going, soldier? I have one thing really quickly to say, and then I'm gonna have to go in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I was just going to say is that the fatalistic thing seems so fitting for a game that ends with literally a meteor crashing into the planet, and like doubling down on like an ending like that would be great. And then just taking that and adopting it into the destiny is like, it's just going to happen whether or not you like it or not. I think that's contradicting the like whimsical tone that this game has adopted, but I think that's the way to do it. but that's again only a personal opinion.
And look, I fully agree. Loss as a theme has to be personal. A ton of people die. Like the actual ramifications of the events of OG results in like probably millions of lives lost. But the only ones we feel are the close ones, and that's because that's human nature. It's unfortunate, but um, you know, there was once this was part of like a proposed nuclear argument that in order for the United States to launch nuclear weapons, there was a proposition by a famed psychologist that um, in order to actually do it legally, the person that would turn the key would have to first murder a human being that was directly in front of them in order to give themselves, or in order to be legally permitted to turn the nuke over. And that was all immediately rejected. And the reason they said was because no nukes would ever get fired. And that's because there is this personal connection with death. So it really is important, I think, that we experience that loss somehow. And I absolutely do not think that we're going to skirt that. Like, we're going to have personal losses Final Fantasy VII Remake going forward. And I think it'll probably be Aerith. Now, talking about Zack, I get it. Like, he is important to the development of Cloud, kind of. But, like, in the OG, how often does he really talk about Zack, his best friend? Like, he barely is aware of the guy. Really.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, well, like, here's another thing that I've been pushing for the longest time is that Zack does not need to be dead for Cloud to have the Buster Sword.
Yes.
He just needs to be absent.
Yes.
Sure.
I was literally about to say it because you guys have grilled this into me over like the time that we've been talking, is that like Zack is only the persona that is given to Cloud. There's nothing else. There's not any other aspect.
I don't even say that much.
Right, exactly, and that's even debatable. So, like, do you have to have that, or can you just make it a character thing for Cloud to have? His want to be in Soldier, him wanting to be in First Class, that all is already there.
Yeah, that's
so
all.
So why does it need to be in Zack 2 and have that be such an like a crucial aspect of it?
But like the reason why I bring that up is because that's another thing that people say when they're just like, well, it has to be a multiverse because it doesn't make any sense unless Zack is dead. Well, no, Zack does not need to be dead. Zack just needs to be absent. And so there are a few viable explanations as to why he's absent.
Right.
Like, sure. The Turks were looking for him. Maybe they stashed him somewhere and he didn't want to leave Cloud without a means to defend himself. Or maybe it's Zack started to go fucking crazy and turned into a black cloak and then once again gave Cloud his sword because he's like, I know I can't protect you anymore. Take this.
Or he didn't have a choice. I mean, he could have just turned into a black cloak. And and like, yeah, and I actually agree with Soldier First Class here. Like the only feelings that anybody really had for Zack are at the end of Crisis Core. And
I didn't have feelings for Zack at the end.
Well,
of
you're
I would definitely say that he's an enjoyable character in that game. Like, I enjoy Zack in that game. The thing I don't enjoy is some of the characters that he gets to play off of. Like, that's where the game, I think, suffers the most. I don't think him as a lighthearted, enjoyable character is a bad thing.
And
Zack sucks.
I don't think, and so, like, look, if multiverse is the deal, and I'm cautiously optimistic that it's not, and I think we have a lot of potential other things it could be. I'm leaning heavier and heavier into the Genova stuff because, I don't want to rest my hat on it because if it goes sideways, then I'll look like an idiot. But the Genova stuff that we found during all this is really a compelling change to the character, and the amount of effect that Genova has on her surroundings, etc., does make it a viable alternative to as to why Stamp is different. So there is that possibility. But here's one thing I did want to really kind of straighten out. I do not think that multiverse Zach being alive, like, really, like, destroys the value or meaning of death for us, because it's not the same Zach. It's a different person. Like, the loss is still the same. Like, in my opinion, like, if there's an Aerith that's alive somewhere, it still is going to be heartbreaking to watch the Aerith that has helped us on our journey get murdered. I don't think the value of that goes away.
It's a cushioned loss. That's the problem. It's cushioned in the, at least you have that hopeful thought and feeling in your head of, well, at least she's okay somewhere.
Yeah, but that's not her though.
And it's not her. It's a different person. And I think I have probably existential reasons for feeling that way. There's a bunch I could get to into the ontological meaning of a persona and what that means, and bore you with philosophy details as to why I feel that way as strongly as I do. But there's and I keep bringing up Dark because I think Dark is a really good representation of this. You really do feel the losses of characters, even though there's a version of them that exists in an alternate timeline. Like you really feel it, and I believe that that's still possible. That being said, there really is all this room for Zach to just be kind of alive, but otherwise occupied here.
I would just, unfortunately, I have to go.
Yeah.
But this has been fun as always for me. I think that this is way too good of a conversation to like dip. I'm sorry that I'm leaving like right at the crux of this, but I just want to thank everybody in the chat for joining. And yeah, Soldier, get I don't know if NSP is still here, but like get her on, because she may be basing in here, but like get her on there and we'll see.
I don't think she agrees with you nearly as much as you guys think she does. But the I get it. I understand that there's less. There is a potential for less loss if multiverses even exist. Like, there's this possibility that she's alive somewhere. But at the same time, quantum physics actually does suggest that that's possibly real in the real world. So you could argue that that's realistic.
Well, sure, but we're talking about exactly, a storytelling device, right?
Sure. Have a good night, guys.
You Bye, too. We love you.
Love you too. Oh.
But no, I agree with Soldier First Class when he says that it will take impact away. Just because most video game players, my friend, my bro, my dude, do not have your philosophy background. And so they're not going to see it the way that you're seeing it. A lot of people will have that thought of, at least she's okay somewhere.
Okay, but the same argument could be made about, like, Dissidia. Zach is alive in Dissidia FFO.
No, that's different. That's way different. And you know that that's different. Don't even.
I just, if our Aerith dies, I don't care if there's an alternate Aerith. That's not our Aerith. And I don't care that Aerith is alive in Kingdom Hearts. Exactly.
Well, yeah, I think of that as it's not the same story, so it's not the same character. But if it's a multiverse within one contained story, then it's different. It is that feeling of it's still her somewhere else, as opposed to Kingdom Hearts Aerith, who is actually legitimately a different person.
And I mean, we're also talking about, like, the irrelevance of death in this universe anyways. Like, death is very not final in Final Fantasy VII. Like, Aerith is active in the live stream. Like, there's just this, like, there is an absolute essential permanence. Like, Todd will probably never see his Aerith again. and that's real. Like,
right.
I've had personal losses, and I think, hey, that person's out there in some version of reality, and that doesn't give me any comfort. I don't get to
Right.
hold that person.
Right.
So this is it's I think that narrative value can be applied to the actual law. I don't think it really takes everything out. That being said, I think where you're probably going to be way different from Soldier and NSP is you don't think the multiverse thing is happening, and they are absolutely convinced it is.
Yeah, and that's gonna be where we have the fight.
But I, in Soldier First Class Defense, he didn't watch the beginning of the video, and the beginning of the video, like that was the first thing that I think we tried really hard to make clear is that Ultimania confirms nothing, and we provided the translations, and you're really good friends with a couple of native Japanese speakers. This is true. Like the purpose of that is just to say it doesn't make any sense that they're both there at the same time and place, so they probably aren't. That's all that they're trying to say.
Yep. That's it. That's all it is.
It's like they're probably not in the same time and place.
Yep.
Tiger Chick, I'm so sorry to hear that. But yeah, a lot of love to you. You've really been a fun supporter, and I hope that in some way, we've given you some joy. But yeah, that's a tough loss. I'm so sorry to hear that. So I don't know. I'm leaning a little bit more into either he's alive again somehow in the same timeline, and maybe he was alive the whole time, and we're remembering it wrong, which is I think kind of the crux of the fifth video, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or the singularity represents that the timelines merged, and that is a problematic thing. Is that time travel, timeline related stuff does come up a lot in the actual game, and you don't want to just say, oh, that's a red herring, but you do want to like take that at face value and recognize like those are just like Final Fantasy concepts,
right?
Like, yeah, they don't necessarily mean anything. Like, it could just be that like they're moving forward. This is just weird plot magic. Now they're all in the same timeline. It could be something like that.
And yeah, that's the thing with Final Fantasy is that Final Fantasy takes very specific words that have very specific meanings and uses them to mean something completely differently. So
yeah. So okay, what do you think the whispers are?
Me? I don't think we have enough information for me to actually make a determined statement. This is what they are. I really liked what Sleep Easy said in part 5, where he goes, they were originally a function of the planet, but some of them have been corrupted by Genova. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
Where I stumble is the idea of what function they're actually serving now.
Right.
Because I can't, because I'm with probably everybody in the fandom that says, I don't think that they're gone. I think they're going to come back. So then what function are they actually serving? I can't figure that out yet.
The thing I keep going to is that they're Minerva. They're that same kind of they're the planet is at odds for some reason with the party, and it is really odd that of all things that they're clearly at odds with, Aerith definitely seems to be one of them.
Oh yeah,
and that's curious since she's a Cetra, and so what is leading to that discord between the two? And
right.
To me, the only two options is that Aerith has gone rogue, and she knows something. She's decided to place the place her friends and her humanity, her loves ahead of the planet's needs, or the planet started to go rogue. And I think the concept of the negative life stream is really the best existing explanation. Is that like the old Cherokee saying, you know, if there's two wolves inside of you, one is darkness and one is light, which one wins? And it's the one you feed. And the planet seems to be you know, composed of both right now, and the one that's manifesting is probably the one that's, you know, being the most nourished. And so I think there's a lot in remake that that very early on gives agency to the planet, which there are a lot of planetary agency markers throughout the compilation, but like it's all like, you know, either in developer interviews that tells, oh yeah, it's the planet, or like just super off like pieces of weird dialogue, you know, or like stuff that you see in reports, you know.
Well,
but like in
and the
this
other thing
game,
is that
yeah.
like the planet as a concept is so nebulous and undefined. Like, and the differentiation between the planet and the life stream is not clear. If it's the same thing, if when you say the planet, you really mean the souls in the life stream, or if there's like an actual consciousness at the center of the planet that's separate from the life stream. And there's no real actual delineation there, and that's what trips me up about this. Because if we, when we're talking about the planet, we really mean the souls in the life stream, then what are we thinking, that they're trying to start the third impact? Like, what is happening? Like,
Right. And you know, I mean, unfortunately there's like there's an argument that could be made for that. Like, you know, is there a cycle? You know, and I'm not 100% on is there a cycle. You know, like I'm, but there is compelling cycle evidence. Like the calendar, you know, is actually a pretty good, you know, bit of evidence. But like the if anything, the last cycle, like, you know, ended with Genova hitting the planet. And so that's, you know, it doesn't necessarily tie into the meteor fall thing. So like, you know, we still don't know what the black materia is. We have no idea what Holy does at all. We just know it's trash against the meteor. Like that's really all we know about it.
well, Bugenhagen says that it decides what's good for the planet and what's bad for the planet, and all that's bad for the planet will disappear.
Right.
And so for it to not destroy Meteor,
it was a value judgment from the planet.
Yeah. And so then the judgment is that Midgar was worse for the planet than Meteor.
And you could argue that, you know, that impact had nothing, you know, come in between it, could have destroyed the whole planet, you know, or at least destroyed everything on the planet. So the planet may have decided that life wasn't, and ultimately it was life that decided to intervene. You know, the life stream as a separate entity from the planet.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, these are all complex concepts, and I really do think that you know, the Whispers as an extension of the planet does, you know, tie into the story that they've always tried to tell about Final Fantasy. I did notice that something Tiger Chick said, and that is, didn't the Ultimania say the Whispers were torn apart? Sure. Didn't say they were torn apart forever. And in the Famitsu interview, it actually describes their original design choice for the Whispers was to look like kind of golden sand, and it's more like whatever they turned into was that. And so it is possible that what we did was remove the corruption from that same mechanism. and or at least like held at bay. But who's to say it won't get respected, or who's to say we won't see, the other side, like of whatever that mechanism gunning for us too. We may be seen as a threat to the planet. The party may. I really doubt that we're at the end of whatever the Whispers truly are. Be it their original form.
Even if the Whispers were torn apart, you know who else was torn apart? Sephiroth.
That's true.
That bitch will never go away.
Yeah, and like, I always thought like Zack dying was really narratively, given the amount of like just invulnerability they applied to just like Lucrezia. Like Lucrezia like just doesn't die. Like for like a handful of Genova cells. Like you can't really die unless you just want to. And so I feel like and I do think that we ought to get people more looking at your Zack as number 2 theory. I feel like at least in the OG they may have been pushing that agenda and then maybe decided later with Crisis Core, like, oh, we gotta squeeze the Zack death into something.
Okay, I have a lot to say about this. So, in terms of Zack's death being linked, I feel like that's only true for Crisis Core, and I think that's only true because of the rating of that game. They were really, really pushing it with that ending to begin with, but if you compare Zack's death in Crisis Core to Zack's death in OG, there's no comparison. They have to unload full clips directly into his chest at point blank range to kill him in OG. Like, it's a lot that he has to go through. Even after he gets that first clip in him, he still tries to get up, and then they have to go and unload another one in him, and they couldn't do that in Score.
Yeah, and for those of you that are watching that maybe don't know, there is a difference between the international version and the original release of OG, where it even makes that scene more aggressive.
Yeah, and I think they did that because they knew they had to do that. And I feel like that's part of like the point of Soldier in the first place, is that they are supposed to be pretty much indestructible, and hey, look at how much it took to take this guy down.
Yeah. Or you just give a 16-year-old a discarded weapon.
And like Zack's death in OG is kind of traumatic. It like even for such a non-character, because he was a non-character in OG. Like I remember watching that scene for the first time when I was a tiny little baby, and that scene got under my skin and affected me more than Eris's death scene did. It really bothered me as a kid because of the brutality of it.
Jean, the difference is actually the part she's talking about, how he gets shot and then goes further along the like drags himself towards the cliff and gets shot again.
And then even after that, after he drags himself to the cliff, he gets shot again, and then he still reaches for his sword, and then he gets shot again. It's fucking crazy. Like, it takes a lot.
You know what though? Bullets must be really strong in Final Fantasy VII universe, because like Sephiroth threw like a comet at me and destroyed several planets in the same instance. Like, and he put a hole in Neptune, and I know they wanted to use Uranus for that, but they decided against it. And it only did like 6,000 damage, so.
Oh, that's because you had that upgraded armor, bro. Zack didn't have that.
I think Zack was a simp, and
I know. Oh god, don't get me fucking started on Zack. But all of this to say that in terms of the Black Cloak theory, either way, he's gonna have to go to the reunion. And the whole issue that I have when people talk about Zack is, and the number one question that I get asked the most is, well, doesn't Zack have a strong enough will to resist the call of the reunion? Bitch, Sephiroth doesn't have a strong enough will to resist the call of the reunion. What makes you think that Zack can?
People really love to argue Sephiroth's will. They're like, oh, he not only resisted it, he took control of it. And yeah, okay, whatever, that's fine. Like, it's an incredibly arbitrary change. And but on Reunion, that story makes the whole reunion thing really kind of muddy, and I think part of the reason is Roche.
Mm.
And just like to kind of explain, like, well, where the fuck was Genesis during the like, oh, he was so far underground that he couldn't hear the call of Genova, or whatever. And then or he was in live stream, just dumb stuff like that. Like the concept that pushed is that Reunion was specifically only people that had suffered from severe Mako poisoning were drawn to Reunion. And that's kind of newish. Like, that is not something that shows up in anything other than that.
I guess I'm gonna have to actually read the good translation of that story, because I don't know.
It's way more readable. Oh yeah, so the Reunion project is different from the Soldier project. Or
Well,
the
that makes
Genova
sense.
project. Yeah. It's Hojo's own weird thing where he takes like Mako poisoned people and puts Genova cells in them because he thinks they'll respond to Reunion. Which is why he chose Cloud. Is because Cloud had the Mako poisoning for being, just near the Mako pool. Like, he collapsed from Mako exposure. That was the whole ordeal with that. But I don't know, like, we don't really know, well, like, if Vincent had Genova cells in it. It was like heavily implied, but now there's this stupid chaos gene. Maybe that's what he has in him.
Well, and here's the thing that I think is super interesting is that even despite the reunion, it's also implied that that Hojo was able to take some Genova cells out of the reunion with him, and he injects himself with them at the end of disc 2.
Right. Yeah, he's that Genova-fied Hojo is the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like,
did they just like not did they develop the concepts after? Like, this is a rapidly evolving concept, and maybe Reunion, or maybe Remake has the opportunity to like flesh some of that out.
yeah, I think like there's the only real viable explanation for this is that Genova cells need to have a host in order to go to the reunion. So if he just had like some fucking random ass tissue, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to sprout legs and go.
The other viable thing is that he apparently, Sung thought he was a pawn of Genova, and that Genova had a more sophisticated sense of self-preservation than just that all the cells need to come to me. Like, maybe I need an agent on the outside facilitating the. Because remember in La Costa del Sol, Hojo says, he just mutters to himself, "Reunion, mother." He says the word "mother." Like,
does he?
Yeah. And so there's that. So maybe he's the implications of larger pawn stuff, and then there's also probably only humans, and because we do learn that one of the Ultimanias that Red 13 was injected with Genova cells.
I don't know that that's true because I think it was in cut content for OG. Like, it confirms that the numeration on his tattoo is different.
You're right. You're right. Actually, I think that is right.
Yeah, because his is in Roman numerals, and all the Black Cloaks have actual Arabic numbering that we all use.
I'm seeing that it was somewhere in Ultimate. Yeah.
Oh,
but
I knew it was somewhere.
That he was actually injected with Nova cells, but yeah, it's a live stream forum, so I'm getting an actual citation. You know how that goes. By the way, for people that are watching, fact check everything on everything, because like a lot of things are wrong. Like if you watched video 5, like Sleepeasy had to pull back from a bunch of different angles because he was looking for information shortcuts at the Final Fantasy wiki, or you know, he listened to people, the live stream, etc. And then like he would sit down, start building a theory around it, and then generally either Sapphire or myself would be like, "What are you talking? Like, where is that?" And then he'd have to be like, "It was in the wiki," and then like, "Cite your source, bro." Like, and then it would just be vapor, or like, for instance, like the most insane one to me is the Latin translation for the prizes, or the uh ones who which planetary song was it? The planet will not forgive us.
I think so.
Yeah, so there's Roy the Great, I think, posted about this, and it's a good, it's a great post, and it's a good note, and I think that it's a good song, and it probably has some lore relevance, but there is a line in there. I'm looking it up right now. And that was translated on the wiki, and the crux of the entire theory that he posted on it was around this line that absolutely has nothing to do with planet or forgiving us. Like, it has almost the exact opposite meaning, that the planet will not be swayed by us. Like the planet doesn't care about us. Like, it is not concerned with, you know, our behavior. Like, that was the whole purpose of that lyric. And instead it's the planet will not forgive us, which has like all this bizarre, like contextually interesting meaning behind it, which actually does kind of fit into like all of the theories that go into 5. But he couldn't, you know, reference that lyric because it was wrong, you know. And so there's a
It's just
lot of
like
stuff like
people
that.
who base theories off of, I hate to say it, Audrey's translations when they're not completely accurate.
And you know, like, again, if Audrey releases stuff, I read it, and
Oh, I do too.
And I generally trust it. But if it starts to like not ring well, like for instance the Barrett thing, like that was the big one. Like that Barrett had to leave Avalanche because it was too extreme. That was Audrey's translation of it, but that was not the actual translation. It was the opposite. Barrett was ejected for being too extreme, like it, and so that fit the game's explanation. And it could really go either way, because you know, like we see in the Avalanche scene, Biggs is like, well, they called us the extreme ones, but you know, they're here in mil-spec gear, and you know, so you know, like, that's important. That's a really important little misstep. And then you know, the same, you know, the big one, which is the multiverse thing, the same space, you know.
That one stuck out to me as soon as she
Yeah.
posted. I was like, there's no way that the developers said space and time. That is not a thing that they said. And then, sure enough.
Yeah, Promised Land, Gene Garcia, and that is the name of the song. Yeah, and a lot of the folks in Reddit and a lot of redditors come to the have been really instrumental in finding little fact issues. I don't. Yeah, time space are intertwined IRL fully.
Yeah, but this was what I was explaining to somebody on Reddit last night. Whereas with Audrey's translation, when she said the word space, she meant space to mean area.
Place. Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't realize that the phrase space and time has a completely different implication in English because she's not a native English speaker. So she looked at the line which says they're not at the same place and time, or they're not at the same location and time. She's like, location's clunky, they're not at the same space. There's a problem there.
It really was. There was a couple other ones. The Genova one was a big one, too, and like the original her translation. First of all, like she called it the dome instead of the drum, and like everybody agrees it's the drum, but
Yeah.
An Ancient Life, the most agreed upon translation that I've come up with for the Ultimania description for Genova was an ancient life form that had been safe kept in ultimate secrecy at the Shinra Company. Genova interferes with the minds of those who confronted her and has the ability to display hallucinations. And that's very different from Audrey's, which was like has the ability to affect the conscience of those around her. The conscience, like meaning the moral compass.
Well, people, even native English speakers, fuck that up. Conscience and consciousness. Native English speakers do that too.
Sure, but this really doesn't. This is more about this. It's like the idea is self-defense. Being confronted is what triggers this, which I think is probably meaningful. I don't know how, but it probably is. And so
it's meaningful, or if it's just an easier way to say those who come in contact with her, who, you know what I mean? Like, because if we look at Efalna's speech in OG, where she talks about how Genova would appear before them as somebody else, that's what that translation sounds like to me. Is Efalna's description of her from OG?
Yeah, agreed. And I think that we always do have to be careful too when we like reference somebody's description in the lore. Like we have to make sure this is from their perspective. And Efalna is probably going to be probably the leading expert on Genova over, say, Sung, who just those were just his musings in The Kids Are All Right.
Right.
And I think that's important to note. But I do also think that just it is weird how much Genova-ing is happening in Remake. So I don't know if that's just to give her more presence and maybe give her a more concrete backstory, or if there's going to be some agency.
You know what I would really like, and this is not just me being biased because I ship it, but I really would like
Genova?
No. More backstory on what Sung and Eris's relationship actually was over the past 10 years, because I feel like Sung's interpretation of Hojo being corrupted by Genova isn't really based on much research that's in Shinra. So it's like he had to have heard that from somewhere. And where else could he have heard it other than her? So then why would she be bringing that up in the first place? That sort of thing. And so it's like, oh, how much did they talk about with regards to the oral history of Cetra that's being passed down from, Falna's parents to her and then from her to Eris? Like, how much did they talk about? How much does Eris even know?
Less and less, apparently. I think the how much does Aerith know is I think that is the biggest that's the tipping point, though, for me to think that the Whispers are a corrupted form of the planet. The idea that every time they touch her, she loses something. Like,
Right.
it seems really odd as the last remaining ancient, the last remaining steward of the planet, that the planet or the cries of the planet or like a function of the planet, even if it's destiny, it doesn't really matter what it is so toxic to her touch. I think that's the tipping point.
I think it comes back to that question of who has gone rogue, if it's her or if it's the planet. Because if she's the one who's gone rogue, I can see the planet wanting to course correct her and take away what agency and independent thought that she has to want to go rogue, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Well, aren't the Whispers essentially Mako, and doesn't prolonged exposure degrade cells and memories?
That's interesting.
I mean, it's not a terrible point of view.
Yeah.
But because what is Mako, right?
It's live stream.
It's live stream, yeah. So what is negative live stream? But that being said, Aerith seems to have the ability to maintain herself within the live stream. So,
hold on, I need to address this Sung shit in the chat. So here's the thing, guys. The reason why the young Sung model was not used, and the reason why it appears that he doesn't age, is an homage and a callback to OG. Because the same thing happens in OG. In that flashback where Eris is like 12, he still looks exactly the same. It's the same character model. They didn't give him a different model in OG. And so they did that callback in Remake. That's the only reason. And I, for one, adore that. It makes me happy. It's pandering directly to me, who laughed at that shit 20 years ago.
I might be with Rods on this one. I think they probably had problems with the meshing, because that's what the guy that pulled the Young Sung model, he couldn't get it to attach to the head. Right. So they were having.
Why they would have a problem with that, though?
I think they probably just ran out of time, and that's how legacy code generally ends up in game. It isn't generally for DLC. Remember Hot Coffee?
No. What?
You don't remember Hot Coffee?
No.
Okay, does anybody else know what Hot Coffee is? Don't Google it. Okay. Yes, San Andreas. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. There was a legacy folder called Hot Coffee, and inside, developers found an interactive sex game that they decided not to include in the game.
Oh, God.
But it is really hard to like. A lot of times there's a lot of legacy code like that. That is just, it's easier to just like move forward. Because it all uses the same textures, so like it's not like redundant texture data. It's just procedural call. It's really hard to dig through code and pull out. And so stuff like that does happen a lot. So it could be either way. I don't know how graphically different a Sung model in the OG would need to be. I mean, it's not like he looked any certain age.
I mean, like, they went back on that later in the compilation, like in Crisis Core, and before Crisis he had that short ponytail, but in OG he didn't. It was just the same fucking model. So they could have made him look younger in OG if they really wanted to. They just chose not to.
That's the hill you're gonna die on, huh?
For OG, yeah. Yeah. They just didn't feel like it. They're like, it's not worth creating a new character model for this 2-second scene.
I mean, I kind of agree, yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't agree that the lack of inclusion is a callback.
I mean,
you're gonna have to cite your work on that one.
Well, and then it also could be maybe they just didn't like the way that his young model came out. It could have just been that too.
I think so. Yeah, that's possible.
Because, like, one of the things that, because I'm in that weirdo fucking part of the fandom, and I love you guys, but a lot of people, when they saw the young Sung model, they were like, where's his ponytail? Why is it not there? Why would they render him like this?
Yeah, the weird Sung has a very particular following, huh?
Yes, he does. That's a good word for it. It is particular.
That is weird. I don't get it, but I don't need to.
I love him. I love him a lot.
So, one of the things that that NSP warned us about off stream and probably on stream is like, if you value your safety and your inclusion in the community, don't ship ever, because that can create a lot of drama. And
no.
And in my experience, sure. So I'm gonna ask the chat here, in all earnestness, like serious answers only. Who do you ship? It doesn't just any two characters. Like, who do you really want to get together?
Well, I think there needs to be a caveat put on that, on what NSP's warning, in the sense that don't ship Cloud. That should be it. If you go into the love triangle in any way, you are fucked. And even if you travel outside the love triangle, Cloud with Zack or Cloud with Sephiroth, it's dangerous waters. Don't go in those waters. You leave Cloud alone.
You really, I fully agree. And honestly, it's a quadrangle, because Zack is irrevocably tied to that now, ever since Crisis Core. And like,
no, because he's dead. Like, I don't know if that counts, if he's still allowed to be in the mixture, because there's no real threat there. He's dead.
Yeah, but death is meaningless because of the alternate universes. No,
oh, fuck off.
no, because at the end, like, like somehow Zack and Aerith are there, looking at Cloud, all happy together. Yeah. Like, and because it's just like, I don't know. So that's another thing, like the meaning of death stuff. Like, it's just like the death is already so meaningless with the live stream. Like, I don't know. It's not as bad as Final Fantasy X, where death is totally optional. Like,
yeah, that shit. But I'm grateful because then we have Auron, and I love Auron. It makes me happy.
But that was such an unnecessary part of his character. Oh,
sure
I've been dead the whole time. I've been dead the whole time. Well, what's the difference? Like, how does that affect me? Like, I know who you are. Talk to me. You're the same stoic personality. Did it make you stoic? Is that what death does?
No, having to raise Tidus made him stoic. It made him drink a lot and shut down.
To me, the very concept of the world makes, already muddies the death concept enough that I really still think that, like, we're gonna feel that. And one of my arguments, like, people really mad about, like, Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge surviving. And one, I think Jesse's, like, capital D dead. And two, I would say that Jesse's death affected me way more than all three deaths in the OG. Because who cares? Like, polygons. Like, they had so little development. It's so, like, it just, so people saying that, like, they've ruined the emotional impact of their death, I think are full of shit. Like, I don't think, like, if you had that kind of reaction to those three characters dying, yeah, yes, okay, that is 100% true. So many people didn't know Jesse was female.
Well, here's the thing. I'm on a different side where their deaths didn't really mean much to me in OG, and I felt nothing towards them in Remake 2, and that was disappointing. And that has nothing to do with the fact that they are implied to come to not actually be dead later. It had everything to do with the fact that Square Enix just hammed it up, and it was a toned down version of what they did at the end of Crisis Core. When Zack died at the end of Crisis Core, I could not stop laughing. The only reason I cried was because I was laughing so hard because that scene was so ridiculous. It was so over the top. And I felt that to a lesser extent when Biggs and Jesse died on the pillar. I was just like, this is too much. This is stupid.
Huh. Well, there you have it.
Yep.
So, for all those who just heard, Sapphire Weapon is a sociopath.
I just like
no, I'm totally joking. That's not even what a sociopath is, but no, I get it. They were kind of hammy. I don't know. For some reason, Jesse's was kind of rough for me, and I think part of the reason is because we did get to kind of know her. Like they established hopes and dreams for her. You know, like the whole acting career thing. Like I don't know why that it just bugged me. Like, you know, like the whole caricature of her was really, even though the performance of her death was kind of, you know, it was a little over the top. I will give you that. It's just like chapter 4 was, you get to see like why she joined Avalanche, what she thinks she's accomplishing, you know, and like there's something that resonated with that about like the way that a lot of young, I think, well-meaning, I hate to say this word, but terrorists will end up dying. And there's this tragedy associated with, you know, people thinking that what they're doing is serving, you know, like their family, but they're so young and, you know, they can't see so, you know, being able to see that and then watching her die for that cause, which was ultimately like her just defending the slums, you know, I don't know why it was rough for me. And you know, I replayed OG and it was like not rough at all for me. But then again, Advent Children used to be like meaningless to me. But like as I watched it again, you know, after remake came out, I was like the sadness around like the children dying hit me a lot harder because I have children now, you know, and I do remember feeling that differently. But I know you didn't even care that all those kids died in Ace.
Nope. Kill all the children. Kill them. Kids need to get jobs. No, I'm kidding.
So, okay. So I think that NSP and First Class are out of the chat. So,
is it time to talk shit?
So
I think they have great ideas.
I think you're in. I think you're in. So what about what they said upset you the most?
When?
In their life. In their life. About start building a case.
Shit. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That's hard. That's a hard question. Come back to me later with that.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's like a 60-40 with them. 60% of the time, I'm on their side. I am.
Well, I think it's because because of the fundamental difference in the way that you think the remake is going. And the what they're saying adamantly is it's failing because it's going to do this thing, and you're saying it can't do that thing. And the more I talk to you about it in particular, and the more I think they're not going to do that thing. I think that you're right, they can't. They would have to, like, unless it was for, you know, DLC or other game series. Like, I really don't think they can.
It's just, I'm just trying to approach it from a game design perspective. It just doesn't work.
I'm not concerned about the game design. Like, I really do think they could make some frustrating switch between timeline thing. There's been other games that do it, like you phase between alternate timelines, and it's fine. Like the actual gameplay part, I don't think that's really the roadblock. I think the roadblock is the story. Like you said, what story are you going to tell?
Yeah, well, the reason why I say from the game design perspective too is because then if you think about the enormity of what it would take to implement an alternate universe, sure, Zack, from a gameplay perspective, could just be a reskin of Cloud, and that would make sense. But you're gonna have to give Zack a full party with all these new characters, with all their own movesets. Like, it's just, and then where are you gonna put him, and what is he gonna be doing, and is he going to be in different parts of the map? Are you just going to be retreading the same map over and over again? Is it going to be like fucking Silent Hill 4 where you just do the same levels over and over again? Like, it doesn't
It's a
work.
logistical nightmare, but
Yeah.
it would have to work something like the DLC for Final Fantasy. And I'm not saying it would be DLC, but it would be that kind of thing where you're like,
I never played the DLCs for 15, so I'm not entirely sure what you're referencing there.
You're literally just, you have a different style of combat. Like it's like there's no parties, like it's a different gameplay experience. And it tells a different story, and it feels very, even though it takes place during the events of Final Fantasy 15, it is this whole other feeling. And
yeah. I've heard that at least one of those DLCs is good, but I can't be asked because I hated 15.
It's probably Arden. Most people thought that was almost like a salvation of Final Fantasy. People are wrong.
No, I've heard that Ignis, his DLC is good.
Ignis actually is pretty good.
Yeah.
I liked Ignis. I think Ignis was like my only character that I like when he lost his sight. Like,
yeah, I hated him the least. That's what I can say about Ignis. I hated him the least.
Yeah, I could probably agree. Actually, I really liked. I actually really liked Aranea. I think
remember enough of her. I feel like I remember coming away from that game like, what was the point of her? Because she was barely in it. Because when I played 16, it was not 16, 15. It was right when it came out, and then I never played it again. So if she got extra content, I don't know anything about it. All I know is the vanilla experience. Aranea was in it for what, like one chapter as like a guest character, and I don't know.
So, Rods, regarding the smug and cynical, dismissive attitude, I mean, okay. Here's what I'll say is that it's hard to know what it's like to be them. I think they've staked a lot of what they do in their life on games. And so when it doesn't meet their expectations, whether or not those expectations are fair or reasonable, I think it's hard not to let that bleed into every part of your life. And I'm not saying that they're without that it's they're that it is a justification of the smugness or anything like that. But I do think that for the most part, in particular, Night Sky Prince, if you talk to him outside of, and I'm not saying that First Class isn't this way. I just haven't talked to First Class outside of Twitter and chats and stuff like that. Is that NSP really loves his fan base. He really does. Like, he has a deep love for you guys, and he has a deep love for Final Fantasy, but he feels like he can't be genuine and serve you guys at the same time. And I think that's a really tough place to be. And so if you hear some of the bleeding, know that he's probably doing his best to not let that bleed out. But like, he's getting hit for stuff that he says on live stream. And yeah, you got to watch what you say on live. But like, he's playing Persona 4 and just like talking, and he's like, oh, this guy's a hater, and then all of a sudden there's videos of Max Dude like destroying him.
Oh god, I saw that and I felt so bad for NSP. Like nobody needed to clip that.
Yeah, and I don't even think like it was Max Dude's like. I think he was just in the moment. Like he's not on TGS time. He's probably kind of cranky too. Like I just think there's a bunch of humans doing human stuff, and it's kind of sucks that there's all this negativity, and I don't think it's fair. Some of the comments I've seen in Reddit about NSP have disgusted me. Just disgusted. Like real personal things like oh good, I don't have to hear his dumb voice anymore. Stuff like that. Just real personal stuff and worse stuff that I'm not going to repeat because it's gross. And all because he put himself in this position, and like there's different types of content providers. Sleep Easy doesn't like to put out content that isn't like 3 hours long and really worth your time. Like he really puts a lot of effort into it, and that's that's the way he does it. But like there is a value to ultra digestible content, and it does take a lot of work. Like yeah, he does several like short videos on stuff that you could read on Twitter, but some people really like to get their information that way, and it can be really convenient for those people. And so he's filling that void, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there should be anything wrong with that.
Also, I don't think that those guys get enough credit for being able to put a video together so fast every single time a piece of news comes out, because I don't know if anybody here in the chat has ever tried to put together a video that was coherent and like or at all to exist, because I have tried my hand at video making for YouTube. It's hard and it sucks to do, and the fact that these guys do it all the time and just that's their first reaction is to do that for a community is a lot.
Yeah, and like no matter what, dialogue where people are not agreeing has the potential to really create a conversation. Like honestly, Final Fantasy VII Remake Reddit has not been this active in like months, and it's just because a bunch of people are like now they're mad, so they're talking about it, and it's still kind of good that people are talking about it again. Like there's still a value to the conversation being progressed, and also just like that's the purpose. That's one of the main like forces for growth in humanity and society is disagreement, and I think there should be some consideration for that. Like none of these people are doing anything that is toxic to other people. They're just disagreeing with what you like. Like there is no need to cancel them because they don't like the game you like. That's not, nobody's getting hurt, so that's my official take, Reddit. I love you guys, but please lay off those two in particular. There are YouTube personalities that suck for other reasons. I think you guys all know who I'm talking about. But they do. But honestly, the reason is because we're in a position where we actually do kind of communicate with other people in the streaming and content creation community, and we know some things that that are toxic that they've done. So
yep. But one more thing I do want to say about the smug, cynical, and dismissive attitude is that I cannot blame them at all, and I feel like anybody who does like really get graded on, like it really bothers them, that attitude, is somebody who has not had this happen to them.
yeah,
Because I am just like NSP and Soldier First Class when it comes to The Evil Within. I love The Evil Within 1. I love it to death. I have almost 1,000 hours on that game, and that game is only 12 hours long. I have written hundreds of thousands of words. I am the only person who figured out the lore of that first game. I have several folders still on my PC of every single file and memo and log and everything. And I put it all together. It took me 2 years to do it. And I loved that game to death. And the second game came out.
I'm so sorry.
Second game came out and said, fuck all that. We're throwing that out and soft rebooting it, but it's a sequel. So it's still the same continuity, but fuck you. And that hurt so much that game has been out for 3 years and I am still screaming on Twitter about it. It fucking hurts, and I have nothing nice to say about The Evil Within 2 at all. Even and I can't. I'm at a point where I can't tell if it's my bias from how much I loved the first game, or if I think that game is objectively terrible. Like, I didn't enjoy playing it. I thought that the combat was broken. I thought that the voice acting was terrible. The dialogue was simplistic and wooden and soulless. The characters had nothing going on. It was a complete failure as a sequel, and the game's treatment of women, oh my god, it is the worst I've seen in recent times. And it's just, I get very haughty and I get very smug and I get very defensive whenever I even think about that game, because that's how much it fucking hurt me. So, like, if you're one of those people who gets really upset when NSP and Soldier First Class sound that way about Final Fantasy VII, understand that that comes from a place of very deep personal hurt.
I'm really sorry that happened to you.
It's not even the first that's happened. Diablo 3 did the same thing. Assassin's Creed 3 did the same thing. I hate my life.
I actually disagree on Assassin's Creed, but I'm about, we'll say 50% on Assassin's Creed 3. That the meta plot was, the Desmond arc was ruined.
Yeah, really and that's ruined. The only part of Assassin's Creed I cared about. I love Desmond Miles. I love him to death. He's one of the reasons why I didn't kill myself in Korea. So it's very personal for me.
Indigenous First Nations representation is so unfairly rare and so unbelievably underrepresented in everything that Connor is my favorite protagonist in the Assassin's Creed series, because they were unbelievably mindful in the way that they approached that. And so I will always give them credit. I'm not sure if you can see my backdrop, but it's part of my, my wife is part of her culture, and it's very sacred to me. So like I will always grant Assassin's Creed 3 honor.
I think that's fair to say, and I think you're completely right, and I agree with you on that point. But the deep personal hurt and betrayal came from with
Desmond, yeah, and I certainly can't disagree there. I do want to address Ultima's point, and I think it's a really good one. And I think that was the big thing that we really tried to address. And I'm kind of bummed that First Class came in late, because it's the confidence for what's going to happen. And truthfully, Night Sky Prince was not as, like, he was willing to bend on that. Like he received information contrary to what he was being told, and was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think First Class missed the part of the conversation where we broke down the Ultimania, why it actually confirms nothing, why there's all these other options. And I saw you posted something about all the different possible things it could be, and that's a really good. Ultima, your stuff is really good that you're posting on Reddit. I just want you to know that I'm watching that and I appreciate that. And that is problematic. Like, I know what's going to happen, because I'm a big shot, and that's That I think was our biggest takeaway. That was, I think, your main thing that you wanted me to say, right? Right, Sapphire was like,
yeah, it was
hey,
the translation because they were so adamant. So to answer your previous question from like 20 minutes ago, what was the one thing that really upset me the most that they have said? It was the way that they so glibly laughed at just the mere suggestion that Audrey's translations could be wrong. I was
oh,
like,
I remember that. Yeah.
dude, you don't speak the language, and that is not a determination for you to make, and shut up.
Okay. Well, please bring that up with him.
I will, but I'll be nicer about it.
So I'm reading Rod's here. I kind of disagree. Not in the toxic aspect. I agree with that, but NSP is, in the opinion business, his job. He gives his opinion games that normally has a large fan base. So every time he puts an opinion out there, with the amount of views he got, he will get some pushback. That's normal for every aspect of media.
The difference between pushback and abuse, though.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, he's. I agree. Like, we're pushing back. Like, we disagree, or I disagree very fundamentally with his assessment of the game. Because once again, that's one of the main things I want to say is, like, even if like if they they would have to not kill Aerith to ruin the story for me, and that's really about it. There's a lot of mistakes they're allowed to make because of how good the game was. Like, I don't think it's fair to just, because you didn't like the potential of the ending, to say that it wasn't an, like, I you know I because um I know that you're in the minority with the combat, but I think it's one of the most universally praised combats, production
It
quality,
is. Outlier.
Just straight up, like, the music was incredible, all that stuff.
Yep.
There's just so much about the game that was just amazing. And so I think that was my main contention with him, is that, one, I disagree with some of the assertions he made, that for sure we're in alternate timelines and it's for sure going to suck. We're for sure going to have Cloud, defeat Sephiroth with a live stream sword. And
I don't think he was serious on that.
no, he is dead serious.
Are you serious?
He really thinks that the remake will end with Cloud, Zack, and maybe even Sephiroth teaming up against Genovaroth or something. And that Cloud will.
I've heard him say that before. I always was under the impression that he was shitposting by saying that. I didn't think he was being genuine.
He's pretty confident. And I think he's probably less confident now. And sure, there is a little bit element of tongue in cheek to that, but he does think that that's like the layer of messed up that they've already given the plot. It's over, okay, basically. And and I disagree with that. And I think they could even backpedal if they wanted. If they were planning on going the alternate timeline route, they probably aren't now. Like, I really do think that. And so, we pushed back with that. We didn't make fun of. We could do all of that without making fun of his personhood, and saying he shitpost. Well, like, okay, what is shitposting? Like, he's on Twitter. Like, he was on Twitter, and I think also he just said what he always does, and look, he's in a position where, like it or not, he's elevated, and people are going to send him occasionally really good tips, and I'm not in the position he's in. And even though, it was a pretty off base tip, I want to hear everything that people send him that's even remotely kind of legitimate. I want to know all the stuff, even if I read it and go, oh, that's dumb. There was nothing wrong with him posting that tip, that potential leak. And And
I think what most people had an issue with was the way that he presented it.
No, if I was there when this for the stream, he's like, take this with a huge grain of salt. Like, he could not have been more clear. This is a rumor. This is a rumor. I don't even know if it's true. I kind of doubt parts of it. There are some parts that are compelling. Like, he could not have qualified it enough. And I feel like it didn't matter. It was just that something that people didn't like came out of his mouth. And they attributed it to, like, he is saying this is what's happening. And even the method by which, like, the fandom presented it to Max Dude gave his reaction, like, a lot more legs than I think. I doubt Max Dude had if he had the entire, like, he had all the context for the situation.
I feel like somebody just sent Max Dude the tweets that NSP posted with just the raw email, and he didn't see anything else.
Yeah, I don't think he would have, responded that way to another content provider. Like, it's you are putting, it's an unfair thing. Yeah, Gene Garcia, Max has spoken well about NSP in the past.
Yeah, and another thing is that because I watched that video of Max talking about this rumor, he doesn't mention NSP by name, so I'm not sure he even knew it was NSP, because all he said was this guy on YouTube.
Yeah,
like as though Max isn't also a guy on YouTube. Like,
he doesn't, and he doesn't mention NSP, and NSP did talk to us before the stream, and he was like, "Yeah, I am aware of that." And sure, he didn't mention me by name, but they found me, after he did it. Like, and so he got significant blowback. And so I don't know if what he was doing was really shit posting. I think he was just doing what you expect a content creator who, like, sure, is he thirsty for content? I guess, but that's like
that's his job.
That's what we want him to be. We want him to, like, there's been a lot of stuff that I found because NSP tweeted it. Like, that's what he's doing all the time. Like, and it is convenient to, like, get information however you get it. And he'll be the first to admit he's wrong. It's just, yeah. I think we're talking it to death, but anyways.
Well, when I said that I thought he was shitposting, I meant specifically about the live stream sword. That always came off to me as a joke. I didn't think he was serious about that.
Well, he seems pretty serious about both that, and that if he enjoys the way that Remake continues, that he is going to legitimately shove a DualSense controller in his butthole.
Well, I hope he streams it, because I would love to see it. Just because I feel like the physics of that is gonna be rough.
I mean, just the body is such a magical thing.
That's true. He's gonna have to do some prep work first. Like, I hope he's ready.
I believe that he's got the necessary willpower and physical regimen. He works out like 5-6 times a week. So
imagine having that kind of time and energy. I can't even imagine that. Last time I was able to work out regularly was college, and then I became an adult, and then everything went bad.
As somebody that's a decade, it was, for a lot of people, I'll say our economy may tank, but for a lot of people that does turn. You get your time back.
Yeah, well, not with my job.
when I was your age, the job I worked with sucked, but
yeah, I go through periods, like, fluctuating between I want this to be my forever job and I can't do this forever, so I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm here now, and that's all I know.
Before we end, can every person in the chat please subscribe to Sapphire Weapon's Twitter? If you can throw that in the chat, because I really I think you are an undiscovered gem of lore community, even though you're so mean to me. Why not believe in the devs? Okay.
Have you seen my Twitter? You want this?
Okay, so I get it. I get what you're saying, Ultima 70s. I do. Well, and I think the answer is Final Fantasy 10 2.5.
Oh god damn it. Stop talking about 2.5.
Um
No. Make it stop.
Okay, so how about this? I think we've streamed so long, and I really I want to get you out there as much as possible, Sapphire, and I do think that you have a really good take on all of this. So I'm hoping that this can help get other
I
people.
hope everybody enjoys my thirst tweeting about Rufus Shinra and Sung, and I don't ship them though, and you're gonna hate me if you do. And also, the Final Fantasy 16 protagonist, who I want him to punch me in the face.
Yes, you know, honestly, me too. Like,
I just want him to punch me in the face.
okay, so before we leave, how about we take 2 questions
Okay.
and then we'll call it. And I'm gonna forward as much of your info over to NSP as possible. Sapphire, just so.
Best way to reach me is always Discord, because I can check that at work on my watch.
Okay. What do we got?
We have no questions so far. This is
Everybody's
good.
thinking about him.
Okay.
So, okay, you know what? Yes, I kind of do think that there's going to be some piece of equipment that is Genesis related, and I do think we'll make it to Benora.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that. That'd be fine. I wasn't it. I think it was Nomura who said that he wanted to put in locations from the compilation. So there's not that many new locations in the compilation. It's like Modeoheim, and
so okay,
like,
and so somebody else chatted me on Reddit. I do want to just say this. So somebody came up with this, that they think that the reason that there's an alternate timeline and that Zach is survives in that alternate timeline is that we're going to follow events where I guess Zach will take us to what is the source of the whispers, essentially setting everything in motion. And while I do think that can be done very well, that kind of like intricate time loopy story, I have no confidence that that matches anything that any of the developers have ever done.
no, it doesn't. Well, wait. It's kind of like that in Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah, when I was thinking that when Squall goes to the Seed Institute, or the what becomes the school for children, and sees Idea teaching them as children, like he becomes responsible for his own existence.
And like Alone's whole thing was kind of like the role that that person's talking about putting Zack in. But I don't know. Final Fantasy VIII is a trash fire, and I hate it.
Okay, so I have had to ban a lot of people today.
That's how you know that you're moving up in the world, man.
Is that how?
Mhm.
Do I think the new threat will be supernova instead of meteor this time?
No.
No, I think meteor is kind of. I think black materia is too. I think it has some kind of. I think we might learn more about what black materia does, how it relates to.
Also, Meteor is like a Final Fantasy staple. They're not gonna just replace it. Yeah, and also the logo is fucking Meteor. Like,
yeah, why do you got to bring up facts like that, Gene?
and that's the thing. So this is something I actually did want to talk about, is that I have this weird cognitive dissonance in my head where it's like, well, they can't change the story too much because Meteor's still in the logo, so all of that still needs to happen. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense for them to follow the progression of events beat by beat outside of Midgar for a few reasons. One being a game design reason, and that's from the time that you exit Midgar to the time that you go to the Temple of the Ancients, it is all just character backstory. That is all that is in the game. Nothing moves forward, there's no central conflict going on. It's just you move from town to town and get each party member's backstory. And you can't just have a game of nothing but backstory. That is not a thing that you can do. And the second reason, if Eris has foresight of the events of OG, why would she not push the party to be like, we have to go to the Temple of the Ancients, we have to get the Black Materia? And I feel like, so they're not going to go in order, but at the same time, all this still needs to happen. So that's what's tripping me up about thinking about the future installments, and why I do want to see a trailer for part 2 to see what the hell they're actually doing with it.
Did you talk with anyone about the pre-rendered scenes that were outsourced? Unverified info could explain the reason to multi. That is verified info. You can actually look through the credits, and at the end of the Ultimania, it actually does describe the. It does have a printed full credit, and it does. And if you've watched the credits at the end of the game, you can actually see the that they hired 2 third-party companies for pre-renders. Goes through the entire cast of all of those. For those of you that don't know, the development of Final Fantasy VII started as completely outsourced. Like the game engine, the combat style, those were all done by a different company, and they moved in house. Not in, I think, 3 years into development. So
I don't know why they ever thought that was a good idea to outsource a game of this magnitude.
I am somewhat grateful they did.
Yeah.
Only because of the combat system. But in terms of asset management, you know what I will say is that it was darker. I did like the darker tone, and I really wish that they would maintain a little bit darker tone throughout.
You know what was really cool about those old CyberConnect 2 trailers was that it had, and I guess there's a valid point to be made in that this was just to cover up shoddier textures, but the greenish filter that was over a lot of those scenes because of the Mako, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, so the combat system, I'm not talking about the balance or the materia. I'm talking about the actual combat animation. And so I'm not sure if you've even Kingdom Hearts 3, like there is a very big difference between the way that hitboxes, your proximity, movement, all of that stuff works in Final Fantasy games. I think it was a real problem with 15. What I really like about CyberConnect is the way that in combat you interact with the model. It's really solid. But the actual materia and all that stuff, that was the same guy that did Kingdom Hearts 2 and Automata. Which is a great game, by the way, if you haven't played Nier.
Oh my god, it's sitting on my shelf, and I never played it.
So,
I played the first Nier. I played the original, and I really liked it.
You played Replicant?
No, the original Nier.
Oh, Nier. Okay, Nier.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was zoning out. I am excited for Replicant. I think because I played that on PS3, not speaking the language, and that quite the ordeal. I feel like I lost a lot going on. It's not the first time I've done that too. I played Kingdom Hearts 2 the first time, and
oh my god,
just using muscle memory to find menu items.
that's crazy.
I don't know why I did that.
Like my buddy Chris, who speaks and reads Japanese, she has trouble with like certain parts of the Japanese alphabet. Like she hates katakana, and she was playing through Persona 5 Royal because she imported it before it came over here, and all of the items are written in katakana, and she's just like, I should not be struggling this hard with this. And she's like, I think this is this item, and then she'll use it and be like, that wasn't it. Nope.
Okay, so I know you don't sleep often, but I am very, very tired after all that. I am looking forward to you chatting up them, and I already sent some contact information, so I hope you get a chance to. But Ultima, again, keep posting. I love your stuff. Rods, we'll talk some more. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to answer as much of your stuff, but keep DMing me. That's fine. If you haven't followed me here on Twitch, I would appreciate it. I also wouldn't mind a Twitter follow, just so that I can keep track of all of you. But thanks so much for all your support, and thanks for tuning in earlier if you did. And for the people that are always here when I sign on, even to like look at USA butterflies, you guys are the best. So good night all, and I hope you all have good evenings
Night,
or
guys.
mornings.